see you guys in the dark.
I'm a 19-year-old female, and at the time that all of this happened to me, I was 17 years old. So just to give some long and necessary background, I was and still dating a guy named Kyle. We shared a small group of friends. We were all pretty close to each other. We did almost everything together, especially when it involved smoking weed and doing other harder substances. They were pretty chill and trustworthy friends, or so I thought. Anyway, one day 2 weeks before my junior year started, I was hanging out with the group at one of their houses, and I just so happened to fall asleep after a while of being there. I woke up probably 5 minutes later to one of my friends touching my inner thigh. Just to note, I was the only female in that group, and my boyfriend wasn't there when this occurred. He was at choir practice, so he couldn't have been there if he wanted to. When the friend touched me, I woke up immediately. He stopped, and I ran into the bathroom crying. I have been assaulted before, so just going through it again isn't the greatest feeling. A few minutes passed by, and I left the bathroom. I pulled one of my friends aside and told him what had happened. His response shocked me. He said he saw what happened, but he didn't stop him. I don't know why he didn't, and I guess that I'll never know. But that same friend told me not to tell Kyle, because he didn't want any friendships ruined. Well, I obviously told Kyle after show choir practice, and he was understandably pissed off. We've come to the agreement that we will no longer be friends with them anymore. A few days went by, still avoiding the group, and we would receive a lot of messages from them, but they were shocking and hurtful messages, saying that I'm being overdramatic, that it's my fault that it happened. Just act like nothing ever happened. He didn't really sexually assault me, and so on. I was pretty destroyed reading all of those messages coming from those so-called friends. But for some stupid reason, we all became friends again when school started. I know what you're thinking. Why would we go back to that shitty group of friends? I guess our only lame excuse is that we hate confrontation, and we wanted things to go back to normal. I wanted to feel normal again. Obviously, it wasn't the best idea taking back those friends, especially the one who touched me, because it started to really affect me mentally. I became super depressed. I developed really bad trust issues with everyone, including my boyfriend. I would constantly have panic attacks throughout the day. I started self-harming once again. I was extremely suicidal, and I was failing all my classes because I rarely showed up to school. The school attendants and staff had no idea what was wrong with me. I would refuse to tell them and my family. But one day came around, and I couldn't hold it in anymore. I told my family. At first, they were supportive, and then it quickly changed. But for a long time, I felt so alone. Around November of 2017, my boyfriend did something behind my back with another girl. He didn't cheat on me. He just sold some weed to her. But for some odd reason, I mentally got worse. I just didn't know how to cope with anything that has and was happening to me. I started mentally abusing my boyfriend, like extremely bad to where he hated himself. And I think at some point, he even became suicidal. Deep down, it made me happy. I wanted someone to feel pain too, but it got so bad to where we broke up twice, but then got back together the same day each time. Fast forward to around 2018 in February. One night, that's when it happened. And it was getting late. I also had school the next morning, so I was pretty frustrated. Finally, around 1 a.m., I started dozing off. I found myself awake, probably about 10 to 15 minutes later. I noticed a tall, dark figure standing across the room in my closet. At first, I thought it was my older brother messing with me, because he's done stuff like this before. But as I tried to say his name, I couldn't. That's when I realized that I couldn't speak, I couldn't move, and I was paralyzed. So as I was staring at this figure in my closet, wondering what the fuck is happening, the figure starts moving closer to me. Then I noticed it kind of looked like it was floating towards me. I can feel myself panicking, but I couldn't move or say anything. So when the tall dark figure reached the side of my bed, I kid you not, it bent over and grabbed my nose. Now I couldn't breathe through my nose or my mouth. I'm just staring at this dark figure. Its face was so close to mine, but I couldn't make out any of its features. I can feel my heart trying to break out of my chest. My lungs are hurting like hell because I couldn't breathe. I legitimately thought that I was going to die. But suddenly, I quickly sat up, gasping for air, looking around my room for that figure. It wasn't there. I was scared. I was so scared, I didn't know what was happening. I thought I had just the most realistic nightmare in my life. I guess that's kind of what happened. The next morning, when my boyfriend picked me up for school, I told him about the nightmare. He said that was pretty creepy, and that was that. A few weeks later, I brought it up to my older brother. And that's when he told me that I actually had sleep paralysis. I had no idea what the hell that was, but after hearing his definition of it and doing some research, I was really freaked out. I read online that stress, anxiety, depression, sleep problems, and some other things can cause sleep paralysis. I realize everything that has happened to me sort of recently played a big part of it. I would be lying if I said I didn't have trouble sleeping for a while after that, but I eventually got over it. But every now and then, I do get a little nervous to go to sleep. Fast forward to now, which is 2020. Kyle and I are doing really well. Better than ever. We are renting our own apartment. We have 2 cats, and they are absolutely amazing. Our 3-year anniversary is next month. We are extremely excited. On another note, September 22nd, 2019, I was diagnosed with extreme depression and anxiety disorder, but I now go to therapy and take medications to help with that. I have never felt better and happier. And in case you were wondering, we are no longer hanging out with those shit friends anymore. I don't exactly remember when this was. I'm pretty sure it was around March of 2018. I was 12 years old and in 7th grade. I often listen to or read scary stories online about things like sleep paralysis, but I never thought that it would happen to me. So before I woken up, I was having a strange dream. I was playing Counter-Strike, but it felt like I wasn't playing, and it was real. I was shooting some targets, and then I blacked out for a second. I woke up on the main road that goes to my neighborhood and saw that the road was gone. The houses on my street were very small, 2-story box houses. There were elderly people standing out front the houses, all reading a newspaper, and a sign at the front of my neighborhood only read Brook G, with the rest scribbling off. I then appeared at my morning bus stop for school, looking at my phone. Everything was normal until a bush that normally wasn't there. It had screamed at me. I remember clearly feeling as though this was normal, so I screamed back at it. We went back and forth until I woke up with the scream echoing in my ears. I was in my bed looking against the wall, unable to move. I hadn't realized that I was experiencing sleep paralysis, but I was still freaked out by that screaming, so I didn't fall back asleep. I lay there not hearing anything for about 5 minutes. I then heard what sounded like heavy boots hitting the ground out in my living room, coming towards my bedroom area. Just so you know, outside my bedroom there is a hallway. On the left is a bathroom. At the end is my parents' room, and at the end on the right is a door that goes to my living room. The footsteps grew louder, coming to the hallway, and then my parents' room. At that moment, I remembered my dad was out of town on a business trip, so my mom, who was a nice small lady, was defenseless. I heard the walking start up again and come towards my room. The door opened, and whatever was out there came in, walked to the side of my bed, and stared at me. I closed my eyes and began to pray. I'm not really religious, but it's the only thing that I can think to do. After what felt like hours, I try to look over and see if anyone is there. I roll over with my eyes still closed to appear to anyone that is there that I'm still asleep. I open my eyes and begin to squint. The coast is clear. I crawl out my bed slowly and look at the clock. It's 4:14 a.m. Dang, I have school tomorrow, I thought. I tiptoed over to my door, grabbed a decorative ore my mom put on the wall in my room, and walked into the hallway. The light in our living room door was open with the light on, which was not normal, especially when my dad is out of town. I check the bathroom and peek around the corner of the door. Nobody. So I make a silent sprint into my mom's room, putting the ore down on the floor. I shake her awake, quietly whispering her name. Mama, I think there's someone in the house. I heard walking around outside of my room, and I began to tear up, realizing this all may have been in my head, and I woke up Mom for nothing. "It's all right. We can go check the house real quick." I grabbed the oar and go check the house with my mother. There was nobody in our house, so I went back to bed. I was relieved that we were safe, and none of that was real. I haven't had sleep paralysis experience since, and I'm glad that it wasn't worse. This story seems like nothing compared to some of the stories about it that I've heard of. Before I start, you have to know that I have a long history of multiple sleep paralysis, ever since I was a child. I dare say multiple in a single night. I'm an 18-year-old male, and while I moved out from my mother's home 2 years ago, and have been independent since then, and have been roommates with my uncle for a couple of months now. But that's a different story. Anyway, this is going to be a little bit awkward, given the fact that I was listening to scary stories while trying to fall back asleep after waking up at 5 a.m., the same date I'm writing this post, which is September 25th, 2018. While I was falling asleep with my headphones on, I started to realize that I had woken up, but my body couldn't move. Now, it was weird for me given the fact that I haven't had any sleep paralysis recently, or at least for a really long time, but I knew what I was going through. My vision started to blur. My head felt heavy, and I could hear the voice coming out of my headphones narrating a story. The strangest thing is that I somehow managed to move my hand and tried to take off my earbuds. As much as I tried, I couldn't take them off. It's as if they were glued to my ears. I somehow managed to take them off, but that's where it got freaky. I couldn't hear the voice. I touched my ears and checked if there were anything there. Nothing. I couldn't hear the buds at all. I was weirded out, yelling at my uncle, calling his name to see if he could hear me. But every time I tried to yell, my voice would go weak. It's as if instead of yelling, I was whispering in a loud way. And that's when I started to see things like demons and deformed faces, just staring at me and evilly smiling. I can't explain how they looked, but they were flashing in the ceiling. Weird, right? I know. As I was sort of freaking out, I literally did what any young kid would do and hid under my blanket. Not because I was very scared or frightened for my life, but to see if those faces could go away. Though they did, it doesn't end there. Here's where the most freaky and weird shit has happened. As my vision started to clear and I was able to move more freely, it's when I realized that I never even moved a muscle the whole time I was going through sleep paralysis. Turns out I was hallucinating and imagining that I was actually moving and yelling. Like I've said, I've had experiences with sleep paralysis for a long time, so I totally have experience on how to actually get out of it, especially when it's a normal one, where you're just awake and can't move. Yeah, I know, that's the whole point of one, but not all of them are about hallucinations and imagining. This one was one of the few paralysis where I hallucinated and imagined things. As I said, I haven't had one in years. I could say this is one of the most recent. I know it's probably not that scary, but for those who have experienced sleep paralysis, know how terrifying it could get and could be. It gets a strong mind and soul to get one out, because you're literally struggling with yourself to be able to move and just come back to reality. For those who never experienced it in their life, I really hope that you never do. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, like, and hit the bell for notifications on future videos and become a stalker of the night. And I'll see you next time.